freedom from the pain and suffering. Not that, your body can't get hurt and the body gets hurt or whatever, it certainly can. But where you're coming from changes. You're no longer coming from a sense of me inside a body. You are the me. The me. Sounds funny, the me. You are the me. So your consciousness is not limited inside a body. You just don't feel yourself to be inside the body. You feel yourself or your consciousness, because self is consciousness pretty much, isn't it? Whatever you think and whatever you observe and feel your life to be, that's what you are. That's your belief system. But yogis don't feel themselves to be in the body. They're not a male or a female. Their consciousness is felt to be everywhere. So it's a completely different realm than a normal human existence. That's why when Buddha came to a particular town and sat down and started to give these Dharma teachings, talk about spiritual things, these students came and sat next to him and wanted to be in his aura of peace. And then there was a man who was considered as the main teacher, spiritual teacher in that town, who got really angry at the Buddha and came to that field where everyone was sitting and gave the Buddha a piece of his mind and proceeded to rage on him and say, "How dare you come into my town and take my students? You need to leave." And you see, the Buddha's not inside that body. That's the difference. The man, the teacher, felt himself to be a normal person inside a body. The Buddha is everywhere. His consciousness, so you could do whatever you want to the body and say whatever you want, but he's like space. It just passes right through. So after this and all this raging that happened on him, the Buddha simply kind of smiled. And the man said, "Well, why don't you say something? Why don't you react?" And the Buddha says, "What you're doing is you're giving me a gift. And I'm not receiving your gift. And so whose gift is it? If I'm not receiving your gift, then where is the gift? It stays with the giver." So here was all this hatred coming at him, but there's no him. That's enlightenment. That's moksha. When there's no him. To be careful, I might smash the harmonium. There's no him. That is a crucial point to understand. If consciousness is like the sky, then there's no place for insults to hold on, to stick. It's kind of like one of those non-stick pans. Teflon, right? Teflon, nothing sticks to the Teflon pan. So it doesn't get affected by all the cooking. Buddha's a Teflon pan. He's not touched by harsh words. You notice that normal people get really offended, don't they? Someone says something to you, you say, "You jerk. How dare you treat me like that?" And even more, "I hate you. You did this to me." Right? And then building and building of emotions. And then maybe the other side is responding in kind. So now you've got two egos fighting because there's someone there. There's a firm belief. You're insulting me. If there's a belief in you and me, then of course there's going to be conflict and attacks. But if there's a knowingness of I am everywhere and everything, then what is there to attack? Consciousness is everywhere and in everything. So you can choose what consciousness you want to develop. You can either focus on normal human consciousness, which is an individualized self, subject to pain and suffering, and birth after birth after birth. But if you break out of human consciousness and you're no longer subject to I am body and I'm separate from the rest of the world, then you don't need to incarnate anymore into a body, because you don't believe yourself a body. A soul who is attached to being a body, who believes itself to a body, will continue to cling to body after body after body. That's why they call it the wheel of samsara. The Buddha broke through the wheel of samsara. He no longer identified with the body. So after that Buddha body died, that particular soul was free. There was it achieved what you call nirvana, which is pretty much considered similar to moksha. Then there's no reason to incarnate, unless the universe wants to incarnate another being into the world to assist everyone. But in that case, the being comes down into a body and is there to help everyone, as opposed to get as much as I want as I can in order to be comfortable. The savior or the sage or the saint incarnates into the world to help everyone, assist everyone in overcoming their ego and all their problems and their suffering. Whereas the human being comes in and says, gosh, I'm in this world and I got to make myself as comfortable as possible so that I can protect myself from how difficult the world is. A whole different sense. One person, one being is united with everything and feels one with everything, and the other being feels like a separate sense of self in this tiny body on earth. A chasm of a difference between the enlightened one versus the individual ego. So that's why we come to these gatherings, to reverse our thinking and go, well, maybe I'm not inside this body. Maybe that's been made up. Maybe the whole world has been telling me that I'm inside here and influencing me. And now I come to a gathering when you're saying I'm not me? Well, that's kind of radical. Who talks about that? You'd probably be locked up if you talked about something like that, in public at least. At least here, there's an opportunity to make the suggestion that maybe you are not in that thing. Maybe that's not actually who you are. Maybe your mind has been programmed to believe that way, but as your mind becomes softer and softer and softer, and starts to feel the consciousness running through everything, I guarantee you won't be identifying with this body anymore. It will not feel like you. You will start to free yourself of your suffering consciousness. That is moksha.